The audience can't read your intentions, only your execution. Hey, Nina here from Oh Just Peachy Studios Productions, and this is a concept that I see pop up all the time in not only creative instances, but in all walks of life. When I sit down to edit a film, the first thing I do is organize, label, and watch all of the footage. But the majority of my job actually is trying to figure out how to tell the story in a way that the intended audience will resonate with all the footage that I've been provided. However, when the writer writes the script, he or she has an intention behind it, which is in turn interpreted by the director, who shoots it the way he or she thinks it should be shot. Then the editor, me, reinterprets it all again in a different form. Every person involved in making something has an intention, but the audience never sees those intentions. They only see the final translation. So how does one walk the line between intentional ambiguity and accidental confusion? I noticed that a lot of artists feel the need to over-explain their work rather than let the art speak for itself. It could be a painting, film, even a book, whatever. The next phase almost always ends up the same way. Someone makes a comment or a critique, and then the artist or the author or the prompter gets very defensive and frustrated that no one gets it. When the translation doesn't work, artists will sometimes try to fix it by explaining the intention instead of examining the communication methods that they used in the art in the first place. Some of this frustration can be remedied by studying theory because it teaches you the vocabulary with which you communicate visually. I did an in-depth explanation vlog about one of the most established cinematic theories, Soviet montage theory, a few years ago on my YouTube channel if you want to scratch the surface of that. But back to my point for today, in the end, if you don't speak the language, other people won't understand you, so it's worth learning the ins and outs of communication within your medium to avoid misinterpretation. That said, communication doesn't always mean literal explanation. What about the auteurs and the artists who seemingly don't care if you get it or not? David Lynch, one of my ultimate heroes, certainly used established film language in all of his work, but famously refused to explain any of it, at least not in any way that's tangible or understandable to most people. For example, one of my favorite videos of him is when he was promoting his film Inland Empire by sitting on a major Los Angeles boulevard's median with a live cow. Someone asks him what the cow has to do with the film. His answer was emphatically, "Cows make milk, and milk makes cheese." What? He was intentionally cryptic, and yet his work was profoundly moving. This is the difference between, I don't care whether you interpret this the way that I intended, and I intended this specific experience, but I couldn't communicate it. So if it's true that once the art leaves you, you don't control the interpretation, which I believe it is, then your responsibility is deciding how deliberately you constructed the experience in the first place, and seeing how you can do better next time. Who do you make art for? Do you care if people understand it? Tell me why or why not in a comment.